Today, we are diving deep into a wild story. It's about how one brilliant and very young data scientist helped build one of the most powerful and controversial political weapons of our time, Cambridge Analytica. This quote from Victor Hugo just hits the nail on the head, because the battleground we're about to walk onto isn't fought with tanks or missiles. Nope, it's fought right inside our own minds. And the prize? It's our attention, our beliefs, and ultimately our vote. So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did something as simple, as mindless as your Facebook likes get twisted into a tool for psychological warfare? How was your personal data turned into a weapon? Well, let's get into it. Now, our story actually starts at the end. Picture this. It's June 2018. A young guy with pink hair, Christopher Wiley, is being led down into the basement of the U.S. Capitol building. He's going into a secure, soundproof, even bomb-proof facility, basically where America keeps its biggest secrets. And he's about to testify before Congress. And what he said in there was absolutely explosive. Wiley, a co-founder of Cambridge Analytica, just laid it all out. He told them the company had built a literal weapon from Facebook data, a system designed to psychologically profile and manipulate millions of voters. He then connected that weapon directly to both the 2016 Trump campaign and the Brexit Vote Leave campaign. I mean, this testimony sparked a global firestorm and what became one of the biggest data crime investigations in history. So you have to wonder, right? How did a self-described gay Canadian liberal end up building these kinds of tools for the American alt-right? To really get that, we need to hit rewind and go back to the early days of political data, when everything felt a little more optimistic. See, Wiley got his start inspired by the Obama campaign, which was revolutionary in how it used data to mobilize people and get them to the polls. He really saw data as this incredible force for positive change. But then he ends up at a company called SCL Group, a British military contractor. And their whole philosophy? It was the complete opposite. They weren't using data for mobilization, they used it for what's called PSYOPs, military-grade psychological operations. Their goal wasn't to encourage you, it was to manipulate you. And this is so important to understand. A SEAL group was not your typical political firm. Their clients were governments, militaries, like the UK Ministry of Defense and even NATO. Their whole business was about influencing foreign conflicts, countering extremism, and basically shaping the behavior of entire populations using information and disinformation. This was the world where Wiley's ideas were about to take a very dark turn. Every powerful tool needs a mission. And for this one, the mission showed up in the form of two extremely wealthy and influential figures from the American alt-right who saw exactly what SCL's work could do for them. So let's meet the cast of characters here. You've got Christopher Wiley, the data whiz. You have Alexander Nix, the slick, smooth-talking CEO of SCL. And then comes the American connection, Steve Bannon, the head of the far-right website Breitbart News, and Robert Mercer, a very reclusive billionaire hedge fund manager who was ready to write the checks. This was the team that was about to get started. And when I say Robert Mercer wrote checks, I mean he wrote big checks. He invested a massive $15 million. And this wasn't just to find some small project, no. This was to create a whole new company, an American offshoot of SCL, which would very soon get the name Cambridge Analytica. For Bannon and Mercer, this was never just about winning one election. Their ambition was so much bigger. They saw a chance to build an entire arsenal for a much larger fight they called a culture war. They wanted to use these psychological tools to fundamentally change American culture itself. Okay, so they've got the money, they've got the mission, but how did they actually build this weapon of theirs? Well, it all kicked off with something that looked completely harmless, a simple personality quiz on Facebook. But it turned out to be a digital Trojan horse. Here's how their secret sauce worked, and it was pretty ingenious. Step 1 was the bait. An academic from Cambridge University made a personality quiz app, and he paid a few 100,000 people $1 or $2 to take it. Step 2 was the trap. Buried in the terms and conditions, users gave the app permission to access their entire Facebook profile. And finally, step 3, the payload. This is the crazy part. The app didn't just take the user's data, it also vacuumed up the data of their entire friends list, all without their friends ever knowing or agreeing to it. So why did they want this specific data? Well, the quiz was based on a very well-known psychological model called the Big Five, or OCEAN. It measures 5 core personality traits that are really good at predicting how people will behave. This was the key to the whole thing. For instance, if you score high on neuroticism, you might get hit with fear-based ads. If you score high in openness, you might see ads about shaking up the system. It let them perfectly tailor the message to your personal psychological triggers. And here's where it all comes together. By combining the personality scores from those few 100,000 people who took the quiz with the Facebook data of their millions of friends, they could train their algorithms. They could basically learn to guess anyone's personality just from their Facebook likes. The endgame here wasn't just to know who you might vote for, it was to build a detailed psychological profile for every single voter in America. The final number is it's mind-boggling. From an app that only a few 100,000 people took, Cambridge Analytica managed to harvest the detailed personal data of up to 87 million Facebook profiles, almost all of them without consent. They now had their weapon. So, let's get to the aftermath. Christopher Wiley eventually decided he couldn't live with what he'd helped create. He blew the whistle and the fallout was just immediate. And it was huge. I mean, the shockwaves hit everything. It was confirmed that Cambridge Analytica's tools were used by both the Trump campaign and the official Brexit campaign. Facebook stock got absolutely hammered, losing $80 billion in value in just 1 week. And governments all over the world in over 20 countries launched massive investigations into data privacy and how our elections are being messed with online. As Wiley himself put it, this whole scandal just ripped the curtain back on a terrifying new reality. That the companies controlling the flow of our information, the giants of Silicon Valley, have become the new center of what he calls our cognitive crisis. They now hold this unbelievable power to shape what we see, what we think, and how we act. And that leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. The tactics that Cambridge Analytica pioneered, they haven't disappeared. If anything, they've just gotten smarter and more sophisticated. So as we live more and more of our lives online, you really have to ask yourself, is your mind the new battlefield?